Yeah, so Ananta, Shesh, and I were just thinking, since it was Ekādaśī, I think we've heard from Srila Sridhar Maharaj that breaking the fast um is what was it that you'd heard, Ananta Shesh?
That breaking fast on the calm time is like a form of service.
It's a form of service, breaking
Mm.
Ekādaśī. So we just wanted to, I don't know, understand a little more about something about that.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I mean, to be honest, these things are kind of over my head, you know. These are like more in the line of Vidimarg, you know, in the where there's particular rules, regulations that we follow. And, you know, I mean, for persons like us, you know, we come from such a different culture and it's difficult to understand the value of these things. But, you know, we saw with Srila Gurudev that this was something important, you know, and also like, for example, with Govardhan Puja, there's some there's some precision that's supposed to be there for identifying the time of the puja for Govardhan Puja. There was one discussion that he had about that once in Russia, and it was something that was very important for him, you know, something he took very seriously. But it is, I mean, it is a little mystifying, you know, to be honest, for me. But I mean, a part of it, see, there's also different angles on it, right? Because a part of it, you could say, there's maybe what you might call metaphysics. There's a metaphysical aspect of Ekādaśī. If we're just thinking about Ekādaśī, there's a there's a metaphysical aspect of the fact that on Ekādaśī, the influence of the moon is stronger, right? And that's, you know, and that's something that's a known scientific fact, right? That the moon influences the movement of water, and we see that in the ocean, and so our bodies are 80% water, right? And so naturally, the different stages of the moon have different degrees of influence, right, on the body. And so from that perspective, the purpose of Ekādaśī is to, it's on the 11th day in the cycle of the moon. The moon has its 14 phases twice, right, within 1 month. The waxing moon, the brightening moon, and the waning moon, the diminishing moon. And so according to, all right, so then the 11th day in that phase is when we follow Ekādaśī, because that's the 11th day in the moon cycle is when it's starting to increase its influence. And so as that influence is increasing, we're checking it in advance, right? And so we follow a day. Yesterday was Ekādaśī, right? At least here in London, we followed Ekādaśī. And so before that influence starts to get too strong, we're like checking that energy, eating more simply, right? So that because the energy of the moon can agitate our mentality, our emotions, and we discuss this, right? That we've heard this from doctors and nurses that they see in hospitals that patients become more agitated, and especially like mental cases, they increase because of the word in right, lunatic. The English word lunatic comes from luna, right? Latin luna for moon, right? So it's a known thing, right? And so there's this scientific element, right, of following Ekādaśī in order to, you could say, harmonize all these different energies and be able to live more peacefully and more focused on our spiritual practice, right? So there's this whole aspect. And then what if, from that perspective, what is the exact significance of Puran, I cannot say, to be honest. I cannot say. But there's also simply the devotional side, right? That we're following Ekādaśī because it is the request of our gurus, right? And naturally, if we're following Ekādaśī on this particular phase of the moon, then we must honor the closure of that time, right? Also, there are so many interesting things. We also hear, Srila Sridhar Maharaj also mentions that, because, from the Vedic perspective, everything is personified, right? So even different times, different days, they have a personal element, right? And a personal deity associated with it. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj has mentioned, like Ekādaśī, there is a deity, there's a goddess of Ekādaśī, and this is her mood of devotion, right? That she likes fasting, she likes austerity, because sometimes it's said that Dwadashi is the following day after Ekādaśī, right? So sometimes it's said that Dwadashi is actually more dear to Krishna. But Dwadashi Devi, she has another mood of devotion. She's not so much into fasting. Her mood of devotion is different, right? And so even though Dwadashi may be more dear to Krishna, we don't observe it with this austerity and fasting, because that's not the mood of Dwadashi, right? So from that perspective, you could simply say, when we're breaking the fast, we're honoring that time shift, right? We're moving into another time shift, and we're honoring that moment, right, by breaking our fast. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm not able to give a perfect answer to this question. But I mean, another thing also is that in this particular age, it's I believe it's actually forbidden to fast for more than 24 hours. Or at least it's not encouraged, right? Because in previous ages, persons would fast like we hear that story of who is that king who Durvasa Muni offended? Was it Ambarish? Ambarish, I think it was Ambarish Maharaj, that he did like Ekādaśī for a year, right? He did like this fast for a year, full fast, right? And the real Vedic version of fasting is quite different from our version of fasting, right? They're actually like the real standard of fasting is you fast from everything, right? No food, no water, all these things. And so we hear that story in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That Ambarish Maharaj had fasted for a full year, and there was some precise time when he's supposed to break that fast, right? And that was how this whole drama started with Durvasa Muni, because Durvasa Muni happened to come visit him at that exact moment when he's supposed to break his fast. And Durvasa Muni was in this dilemma because, in the Vedic culture, to receive an honored guest is very important, right? You have to receive them properly. And so Ambarish Maharaj is in this dilemma. Oh, do I go to receive Durvasa Muni, or do I go and break my fast? If he went to go and eat something when he has a guest arriving, that's a little rude, right? And so he had this dilemma. And so he's like on the spot. And then he had this idea to just take a little water, because water is one of those things that could count as food, but also not count as food, right? And so he takes a little water to break his fast. But of course, as we know, the story goes, Durvasa Muni was not satisfied by that. He became very angry. He was offended, and he attempted to curse Ambarish Maharaj. But of course, Ambarish Maharaj, being the great devotee that he was protected by Lord Narayan's chakra, his Sudarshan chakra. And so that chakra started to go after Durvasa Muni, right? So I mean that may be another I mean, I think there are many things to consider in this topic, right? So that's another thing, right, that we hear in previous ages, persons would fast for very extended periods, as in that case of Ambarish Maharaj. But for us, it's 24 hours, right? We don't go beyond that, right? Even to the point, and this is another interesting thing to mention here, even to the point, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj discusses this too, even to the point when if there is a Vishnu Tattva Avirbhav, right? If there's an appearance of the Lord on that happens to fall on Dwadashi, then there's a dilemma there, right? Because normally you fast at least until noon, right? You fast until the appearance time of the Lord, right? So that generally that's till noon, or in some cases it will be twilight, or in the case of Lord Krishna, it's midnight, right? But Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes this interesting point, right? That to break the timing of breaking Ekādaśī is considered so important that takes precedence, right? So breaking Ekādaśī takes precedence over honoring the Lord's time of appearance. I mean, that's pretty incredible if you think about it. That's how important Ekādaśī is, and and honoring the Puran time, honoring the time of breaking the fast, right? It's really quite an extraordinary thing, right? And so then on those days, and I think there's two on our calendar, on our Vaishnava calendar. There's is it Vamana Dwadashi, and also I think Varaha Dev's appearance day too. We don't honor the fasting until the time of their appearance, but we do break our fast in order to honor Ekādaśī, right? So it's quite an interesting thing. So yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately, if we just, want a very simple answer, then, we can consider we are living in the faithful plane, right? And our gurus have requested this of us. And there's that occasion described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, or is it Chaitanya Bhagavat? Right? Maybe it's Chaitanya Bhagavat, but Mahaprabhu, he goes on his knees to his mother, Shachi Devi, and requests her, "Oh, mother, I just have one question for you. I have one request of you. Please follow Ekādaśī. Please follow Ekādaśī." And that is the reason he made that request, is because generally married women, they would not follow Ekādaśī, because the varnashrama system, it puts emphasis on the social relationships, and the wife is generally supposed to serve her husband and family, so she has to stay fit, so she doesn't follow Ekādaśī. So generally it would be widows who follow. But Mahaprabhu is, of course, putting more importance to the devotional side. And so he requests his mother, you please follow Ekādaśī. That is my request. So, from a simple perspective, we can see like that, right? This is the request of Mahaprabhu, and this is the request of our gurus, right? And there's a few interesting articles we have from Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he's discussing different points about honoring Ekādaśī, and I remember he mentions there are three parts to it. There's first part is identifying the proper time. Then the second part is actually honoring the rata, right? The vow to fast and respect to Ekādaśī. And then the third part is breaking that fast, right? At the Puran time, right? And then, we've also heard, right? Because, as I said in the beginning, right, this is, following these strict regulations and, identifying these precise times. This is a part of Vidhi Marg, right? The path of rules, regulations. But then ultimately we are worshiping the Raga Marg Bhaktas, right? Those in the path of spontaneous devotion. And so, we also hear of some occasions when our gurus, they allowed for some, more, uh, some adjustments, let's say, right? And we heard from Devi Shishparu that sometimes if devotees happen to be traveling on Ekādaśī, Srila Sridhar Maharaj would tell them that they could eat grains, right? Because they're traveling, their body needs more energy. I mean, that's not something I would do personally, but if the Paramahamsa Vaishnava gives you that permission, right, then you can take that license. So, we do hear of some cases, right? And another funny thing that can come up is when you're traveling between time zones, right? On Ekādaśī, that's happened to me before, and and I think it was Kumkum who asked Gurudev about that once, and Gurudev, she was asking, like, what do you do? You're leaving one time zone when it's Ekādaśī, you're entering another time zone where it's not Ekādaśī, and vice versa. What do you do? And she said, Gurudev just said, it is impossible. It is impossible. And Shuddha Prabhu, he asked Gurudev a similar question. It was also a question related to the timing of Ekādaśī and breaking the fast. I don't remember the exact question, but I remember he said, Gurudev ultimately said it, it was not the most important thing, that if you're not able to exactly follow him. And Shuddha asked him, then what is important? And Gurudev said the relationship between the guru and the disciple. So that is the most important thing. That connection of surrender, right, of the disciple towards their guru. So that is another thing. So, and another thing is that I also saw, because I grew up in our mission, and in the earlier days we all follow the Navadip time, right? Technically we know you're supposed to follow um the times that are calculated exactly for your zone, right? Because the phase of the moon will be different in different parts of the planet. So we know technically that is what is supposed to be done. Srila Sridhar Maharaj has said, even a difference of like 100 miles, that needs a different calculation. So technically that is the case. But at the same time, it was my experience, that earlier on in the mission, our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he was fine, that we were all following the Navadip calendar is what I want to say. So I grew up in London, UK, and we were all following the Navadip calendar for Ekādaśī. So we followed Ekādaśī when it was Ekādaśī and Navadip, and we didn't think about all these time calculations. And later on, there were some devotees who saw that this was being done in other missions, and they suggested it to our Gurudev, and our Gurudev accepted that happily. But we can also see that it's not that he himself, insisted on that, from the very beginning. He was okay. He wasn't expecting too much of us. And he was accepting that we were following the Navadip calculation. So, he was not, it was not something very rigid with him. So, I mean, what can I say? Overall, we're just doing the best that we can, trying to honor Ekādaśī in a spirit of devotion, right? She's known as the mother of devotion, and honoring that. We can think from that perspective, right? That Ekādaśī is a devotee of the Lord, right? And by honoring her and her mood of devotion, we are inviting her blessings upon us, right? And a part of respecting that day of Ekādaśī is identifying the closure of that. And so the Puran, the breaking fast, that is a part of that, right? So that is a simple way to see it. And no doubt there are many other subtle and technical considerations, but I'm not acquainted with them. Perhaps someone can research that point. But yeah, that's everything that comes to mind on that topic. Oh, thank you. I don't know if that's helpful, or does anyone want to bring up another point or comment or question?
No, it's very helpful, Didi. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad. But yeah, I mean, in a from a technical point of view, that well, I think Ananta Shesh is already aware of that, but that Paran time, that's marking the shift, right, from one TT to another, from one lunar phase to another, right? As far as I understand. And so we're honoring that shift, right? That transition from one phase of the moon to the next, as I understand. So, but yeah, I'm sure there's so much more that could be said. Did anyone have any other topics for today? No, Gangalila wants to suggest anything.
Dandavats. I don't know. I actually follow what ISKCON is saying, because that's like I get it on an app, which is really practical because it's all this looking up is for me really, I get really mixed up with all these websites. And they have a warning app, so it comes up a day before, and it's for the Los Angeles Times. So I feel like, ooh, that's safe because it's giving me my timeline without having to each and every time go like, oh, oops, am I forgetting something? Because I was really prone to forgetting it before. So yeah, I find it that helpful. So I do that, and I don't know if it's the exact same. I think it might not be the exact same. And yeah, just I don't have anything else. Thank you, Haribol.
Okay. But yeah, that's another thing, is I do, sometimes I'm not entirely sure about how accurate any of the calculations are. Sometimes, because it actually requires a lot of skill, it requires a lot of and often there are like automated calculations that are being made, which, there is some margin of error there. So yeah, that's another thing. But anyway, that's another discussion. But sometimes when I'm traveling, I'll just follow the Navadip time, I think, that's definitely accurate. Yeah, what to say? We just do our best, right? All right. Well, if no one has any other suggestion, then we could read something. Let me see. Let's see. Maybe we can. And actually, this is something that I have really wanted to, I have not properly honored, that we are actually in this extra month. Oh, well, it's just, when does it finish? It finishes on the 15th of June. We're in this extra month of Puruṣottam. It comes like every 3 years or so. And I have been wanting to read this article from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Yeah, so yeah, it happens like every 2.5 years or every 3 years. There's this extra month that comes in the Vedic calendar called the month of Puruṣottam. And it's Srila Sridhar Maharaj explains that generally it's considered like from a material point of view, it's an unlucky month, right? It's a month where it said like, you won't have much material success. And so, for that reason, some persons will, they don't like the month, they neglect the month. But then Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives this wonderful explanation that because of that because the month in a sense has been rejected, the Lord gives his special mercy to that month, and so makes that his own month. Right? This is the Lord's nature, his loving and merciful nature. And so he like makes that his own month. And so because of that, it's said to be a very okay, Soumya Sham Vijay Prabhu. Happy to have you with us. Few moments, Dandavat. And so because of that, so it becomes a very spiritually beneficial month, right? Because it has the Lord's special mercy behind it. And so I have been wanting to reread this article, and I didn't get around to it yet. So let's do that. Maybe we can do a screen share. Let me do a screen share here. Here it is. Okay, here we go. This is on our scsmat.com. Puruṣottam, the extra month, by Srila Bhakti Dakshak Sridhardev Goswami Maharaj. And there's a technical explanation at the top. Periodically in the Vedic calendar, a year has 13 months instead of 12. This extra month commonly splits one of the Vedic months into two, and not necessarily the same one each time. So this is for those who have a mathematical or technical brain, which is not me. In this regard, the following article was written by Srila Bhakti Dakshak Sridhardev Goswami Maharaj. It was first published in Bengali as the editorial to Sri Gaudiya Darshan magazine, 16 September 1955. So originally this was a Bengali article. The month of Sri Puruṣottam. This year there is an extra month, Puruṣottam month. It gives a more favorable opportunity for Krishna Seva, and it is a particularly favorable opportunity for the fortunate jivas. Puruṣottam month has all good qualities, just like Bhagavan Puruṣottam himself, and is considered the crown of all months. Even the most holy months, such as Vaishak month, cannot be compared with this Puruṣottam month. Bhagavan, the Lord himself, has mercifully accepted this month and given it all his power. We know such things by reading Sri Brihanaradiya Purana. The materialistic Smarta Sampradaya, by their karmic standard of judgment, avoid performing rituals during this month, and they avoid anything considered materially auspicious. By their calculation, this extra month is materially barren or gloomy. So this Smarta, I think most of you are familiar, but for those who aren't, this group, they're referred to as Smarta. Sometimes you'll hear this term. And it's referring to these followers of the Vedas, or you can call Hindus, or I don't know, right? Well, Smartas. They have a very ritualistic approach towards their spiritual practice. And that's generally because they have, it's a calculated ritualistic approach because they want some material gain, right? And and speaking of Ekādaśī, right, like that's something we've experienced. One of our godbrothers, he went on a preaching program with Srilacharya Maharaj. This is some years ago, of course, and I think I've told this story before, but they happened to be, they were in this village preaching program, and it happened to be Ekādaśī while they were there, and our godbrother was so impressed because the whole village, they were following Ekādaśī very, very strictly, like in a very extreme way, fasting, and they were getting up early, like 3 or 4 in the morning, and going on Nagar Sankirtan throughout the village, and and doing all these practices. And so our godbrother was very impressed and mentioned something to them like, oh, you're following Ekādaśī so strictly. And then the person he spoke to responded saying, oh, yes, don't you know all the things you can get from following this? You can, get so much wealth or a beautiful wife or, whatever it is. There's like there are places in the scriptures where they'll describe everything you can get from following particular Ekādashis. And so this person was following like in this very strict and energetic, enthusiastic way, but their goal was not devotion, right? Their goal was material gain, right? And so this is one approach. And this is one of the reasons why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur justified adjusting our observance of Ekādaśī, right? Because as I said earlier, originally, technically, a fast, according to the Vedic standard, means a full fast, no food, no water. But Saraswati Thakur pointed out, like, what is the actual point of our fasting? The real purpose of our fasting is to please Krishna and to increase our devotion to Krishna. We want to give more energy to Krishna and take less energy for ourselves. And so Saraswati Thakur pointed out, if we are doing a full fast, we're incapacitating ourselves. We won't be able to do so much service, right? And so for that reason, he instituted the half-day fast, right? We can fast until noon, and then we take anukalpa, like fasting, not full fasting, but more simple food. So this is the mood of devotion, right? Not that we're making these calculations for our own benefit, but we are doing what is necessary for the Lord's satisfaction and for increasing our devotion for the Lord. It is a different approach, right? And so these smartas, they tend to have this calculative and ritualistic approach, and based on trying to increase some material gain or gain some material benefit. So that is their view on this month of Puruṣottam, that there's no benefit to be gained in this time. So this extra month is materially barren or gloomy. And Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that if we do karma properly, then we gain some capacity to enter within jnana. Sarvam karma kilam parta jnane parisamapyate. So this is, Bhagavad Gita, it has a few like key transition points, right? There's karma yoga, the path of action or selfless action, nishkam karma yoga. Then there's a transition right into jnana yoga, cultivating knowledge about the absolute, our spiritual identity, and so on. Then there's a transition into dhyana yoga, right? More traditional yogic practices, austerities, meditation, and so on. Then ultimately there's the shift into bhakti yoga, right? The path of devotion. And so then there are markers, like there are like transition markers, verses that are marked if you look at it with a more discerning eye. And Srila Gurudev, there's a very nice chapter in Revealed Truth where our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj is discussing some of this like overall development of Bhagavad Gita and the different stages it goes through. And so this is one of these key verses, which is marking the transition from karma to jnana, right? And it's meant to be a natural transition, right? That the idea is that through karma yoga, through selfless action, then there will be this natural automatic purification of the consciousness. And through that clearing of the consciousness, we will automatically become qualified for receiving spiritual knowledge, right? And developing our spiritual understanding. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj is mentioning that here, right? That by following the path of karma, or more specifically, selfless karma, selfless action that is free from our selfish desire, that's based on our sense of duty, then that qualifies us to enter into jnana, into developing, understanding, spiritual knowledge, spiritual teachings. But the fruit of that knowledge, the knower and the known, are all nirvishesh, or similar to mukti. By doing holy activities, we may be able to attain heaven. But after finishing that good reaction, we return to this world known as Martya Loka, the plane of death. In this way, those who aspire for material things have to undergo reactions to their actions. The devotees of Krishna, however, are worshippers of Kirtaniya Sadahari. Their process of worshipping is given in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nija Bishta Krishna Preshta Pacheta Lagia Nirantar Seva Kore Antar Manahoya. They are 24 hours per day engaged for the service of the Lord, for they do not have a moment for their own sense enjoyment. They cannot tolerate those who are against doing their seva, especially those who want some result in this world. When they see these types of jivas, they dislike them more than hell. We can see many scriptural examples of this. So those, let's see, persons who are following religious practices with some calculated approach, they may achieve heaven, right? But the result is temporary because they are connected with a temporary plane of life. The result of their activity is temporary. They may go to heaven for some time, but they again have to come. And so they're going in this cycle, right? But the devotees of Krishna, they're not making this type of calculation, right? I do this and I get this result. They are simply interested in the service of the Lord. And whatever is helping the service of the Lord is good. Whatever is not helping the service of the Lord is bad. That is their simple and straightforward calculation. So similarly, the worshippers of Saguna, the plane within the modes of nature, always show their objection to those who are worshippers of the Nirguna, the realm above the modes of nature. There is no lack of scriptural examples here also. So those who are worshipping from the perspective of Saguna, right, the material plane, right, they are making calculations based on material gain and loss, right, involved with the modes of nature, right, sattva, rajas, tamas. So they have their standpoint. But then those who are connected to the eternal world, nirguna, the plane that is free from the material modes of nature, the plane that is connected with the Lord's interest and the Lord's service and the Lord's devotion, they have a completely different standpoint. The smartas, those under the rules of mundane nature, their material duties are already scheduled within the regular 12 months. So they dismiss this extra month. However, those who continually spend their time in worship and service of the Lord give much attention to this month. They know fruitive activity is a cause of material bondage. However, those who desire material results from fruitive activity consider this month to be barren, to be materially unhealthy. Such persons dismiss this month. Therefore, this extra month feels it is rejected. So it feels the necessity to surrender to its master. The Lord always gives much protection to the surrendered. So he gives all his own wealth and property to this month. And in this way, it takes on his properties and becomes like him. Therefore, the Lord gave his own name, Puruṣottam, making this extra month the king of all months. He himself glorified this month and gave it to the hand of his most dear devotees, whom he loves as himself. The devotees serve the Lord Goloka Bihari, Puruṣottam, very happily in this Puruṣottam month, the month when the materialists are very silent in their activities. It's a very funny thing, isn't it? Like And it's kind of like you could say this is a nice example, right, of how that which may be considered meaningless to materialists will be everything for spiritualists, and vice versa. What is so meaningful for those with spiritual vision, that will be meaningless to those who have no spiritual vision. And you could also say in this way, the two groups can coexist, not disturb one another, because they're both trying for something different. And it reminds me of that story of Sanatan Goswami, right? When we hear of that man who came to him and he said, I heard you have this touchstone, I'm very much in need of some money. And I heard you have this touchstone that can turn anything into gold, and Sanatan Goswami said, yes, yes, I have that. And oh, where is it? Where is it? Can I use it? And Sanatan Goswami, oh, I left it in that trash heap over there. And at first that man was very excited and going to get that touchstone. But then it occurred to him, hang on a minute, that this sadhu here, he's in possession of something so valuable, could make him the most wealthy person in the world. But he has no interest in it. He has no interest in it. So what kind of wealth is he in possession of? What kind of wealth does he have that he has no interest in the greatest wealth of this world? He must have some greater wealth. He must have some greater wealth. And so he reflected on that, right? And he turned to Sanatan. Oh, but I think he actually went, right? He went and he'd found that touchstone. He had it and he was about to leave, but then he reflected. And so he asked Sanatan, oh, what is it that you have? What is this great wealth you have within you that you have no interest in this wealth? And Sanatan, and can you teach me that? Can you give me that type of wealth? And Sanatan said, yes, I can, but first you have to throw that away, throw that away in the Jamuna, and then I can teach you. And so he did so. So it is an interesting thing, right? We could also think of it as, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he frames this discussion sometimes, right, is the subjective and the objective, right? There's the objective plane on the surface, right? These events, these persons, this time, place, this circumstance. But then there is the substance within. There is the plane of consciousness within. These are two completely different worlds, right? And we want to live in that world of consciousness, ultimately, right? We want to live in that world of consciousness. Otherwise, it is like we are living like insects, actually. We're living like insects, just connecting with the surface of things, right? An insect, may come before us and not have any awareness of what's the relationships here, what's the dialogue going on. And now, there are so many things that the insect is not aware of. They're aware of their objective, immediate physical environment, right? But they don't have the capacity to go beyond that. And so similarly, we're often not much better than those insects. We're just living in the world of our circumstances, right? That I am this person in this situation with these relationships and going through these circumstances. And it is very easy for us to become consumed by that, right? Our day-to-day happenings and experiences and relationships and all these things. But there's actually a whole ocean of consciousness beyond that, right? And deeper than that is our relationship with the Lord and with the Lord's own, with the Vaishnavas, Hari, Guru, and Vaishnava. There is a very deep, deep plane of reality, beyond the objective plane. And we want to connect with that, right? We want to connect with that. And that is something that was very powerful when we got to have the association of Srila Govinda Maharaj, right? That we could see that in him, right? We could perceive that in him, that there's this one Bengali word, gambir, right? Means like this gravity, this graveness. And we could see that in him, that he's situated in this very deep level of reality, right? That word, the word guru, right, means heavy, right? This is the meaning of the word guru, because the guru is fixed in the truth. This is the idea. The guru is heavy in truth, and not any truth, but the highest truth, right? Supreme truth, eternal truth. He is heavy in that absolute truth. And the disciple is sometimes referred to as lagu, which means very light, that we are like a feather going hither and thither. Our consciousness is running after, like a puppy dog running after whatever sparkling thing comes in front of it, right? Our minds are often like that, right? And so that was something very powerful, to be able to stand in front of that, such an exalted soul like that as Srila Govinda Maharaj, and to see that, to see this weightiness that was within him, not this flickering, because that is actually also the nature of the Atma. When one's soul is more awakened, then there is this weightiness, right? There, it is a more stable plane. It is a more steady and stable plane. But the plane of the intellect, the plane of the senses, the plane of the mind, it is more unsteady, it is more unstable, it's very flickering. That is its nature, here, there, everywhere. Right? But when one is more situated on the soul plane, then there is this gravity, this weightiness, they will move in that way. And that is something that we saw in Srila Govinda Maharaj. So that was our good fortune. Always seeing the environment through the lens of absolute truth, right? Not the filter of our mind and senses, but seeing things, a deep vision of reality, deep vision of reality. Oh, Krishna Chaitanya was here, but looks like he dropped out again. Can't remember how we got onto that discussion. Yeah, I remember once someone had said something to Gurudev, like, "Oh, Gurudev, I think you changed your mind about that or something." And he said very seriously, I never change my mind. I never change my mind. Our minds tend to jump right here, there, everywhere. But he was always fixed, and he had this weightiness, right, within him. And even, Mahananda Prabhu, Madhusudan Maharaj, now he told me that Srila Govinda Maharaj, he, just as a small example, right, when he left, if he was going out somewhere, if he realized he'd left something behind, he said he would never go back. He would never go back. He would just continue, right? This like jumping around here, there, and oh, let me go back. I left. He wasn't like that, but once he was on track with something, he went with that, right? Wouldn't turn back. So he had that type of weightiness, gravity about him. One pointed, looking forward always. That was his mood. And always, when making decisions, considering things from the broadest perspective, right? And not just considering, superficial events or circumstances. And, like with myself, I felt that, and especially reflecting, like even years later, and like the way in which he dealt with me and guided me in my service, it was what I came to understand was, and at the time I didn't always understand, didn't always like, some of his instructions, but in later years, what I understood was that when he made decisions, when he gave guidance, he wasn't just thinking in that moment, but he was thinking about your journey within eternity. What will be good for you in this lifetime as a whole, right? But also within eternity. He was thinking from this very broad perspective, right? Like a parent, right? When they're raising their children, they cannot just give them what they want. The child wants a candy bar. You have to, oh, well, you wait. First you have your lunch, wait some time, then you can, they have to think about the overall nutrition of their child, what's good for them, the emotional training of their child. There's so many considerations. They cannot just give the child what they want in this moment, right? They're thinking about their overall health at this moment and for their life, right? And so with Srila Govinda Maharaj, that we also saw that he was thinking like that. He was thinking about our welfare within eternity. And he did not want anything also from us. He did not need any material asset or resource or gain from us. That was not his desire. And we can prove that, how he interacted with us. But he was deeply considering what is the best thing for us in our journey through time eternal. And in every moment he was living like that. In every moment he was living within eternity and thinking from a very deep level. Past, present, future, all of these things he was considering at once. And it gives us some good food for thought, right? How we tend to react, right? This thing happening, that thing happening, but to zoom out, right? To see things from a broader perspective. We have to think like that. And just now we went to visit Anjali Didi at the hospital, and when you witness, someone who's, close to the end, it really gives you some reflection. Like, that day will come for all of us, actually. That day will come for all of us. And how will I live my life if I'm really thinking like that? How will I live my life each day if I'm really living in consciousness of this precious time that we have, right? We're just about at the end of our time. Does anyone have any last words, comments, questions, or anything at all before we close? That galaxy, is that Kirtida? I think maybe that's Kirtida.
No, that's me, Swasni.
Oh, Suvasini. You're here undercover all this time.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know why I just signed in and then it just came up with this galaxy. I don't know how did it happen.
okay.
I just
You're
pressed the link.
you're
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah, I'm on the phone, but normally it doesn't come like that. I think I don't know why it came this way.
Mm. Oh.
That's it. And then I just left it like that. Not,
You want to share any words of wisdom, Suvasini Didi?
wonderful. What a review. That's wonderful. Happy to, think about. Oh, name is changed. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's
You
for
didn't
Guru Day.
change that yourself?
No, I didn't. I think Ananda Krishna probably changed it.
Yeah, I changed it. I changed it.
Oh, you can change people's names like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. With all the diacritics and everything.
Right.
What were you saying, Didi?
No, I'm just thinking about Guru Day, whatever you said about Guru Day. That's, yeah, to remember that is beautiful. Yeah. And the earlier thing you were talking about Ekādaśī, I just want to say that in Jagannath Puri temple, there's this deity of Ekādaśī Devi. This is,
Oh, really? There's a
yeah,
deity of Dwadashi Devi.
no, Ekādaśī
Oh,
Devi.
Ekadashi. There's a deity of Ekadashi. Wow.
In Jagannath Puri temple, that's in the main altar, there's Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. But then when you go around, in the there are so many different deities there. So like Narsingha Devi, Bimala Devi, Lakshmi Devi, and all that. That's also a small temple with Ekadashi.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, in Ekachakra, there's that like replica of Jagannath temple. I don't know if you've been there, Subhasini Didi.
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah,
That
when
it
it
said
was.
that Nityananda Prabhu like brought the Jagannath temple so his parents didn't have to go there, right, in their old age. And so, we as Westerners, we cannot enter the Jagannath temple. So, but when you go into the temple, you get some sense. And so you see these smaller temples that are surrounding. I remember Bhima Devi. So that gives me some idea. There's also a deity of Ekadashi. Oh, that's I've never heard that before. That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah, only this time when I went, I just, went like twice. We went to the temple with Shreyas one time, and so we just went through
Okay.
every deity, and so
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, wonderful. It was Shreya. Shreyash was just here. He just went back. He came also. And
Yeah.
yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I saw the picture with you, with Anjali and with you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lavanya Mai posted that. Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just in London with the devotees for a couple of days, and that was very nice.
Mm,
Very nice
How is
group.
your father, Vishaka Didi?
yeah.
He's doing a lot better. Yeah,
Oh,
he's
good.
doing a
Oh,
lot
good.
better. Maybe should we stop the recording maybe?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.